first characters. He actually is in the book that I wrote when I was 15 that was awful. Right? You know, most authors have that. My very first book, Dalinar, is in that book. Years later, I have found a place where, as a more mature writer, I can actually do his story justice. I actually wrote the first draft of Way of Kings in 2002, mere months before I finally sold a book, after many years of trying. And Way of Kings was the book I kind of wrote as a love song to my favorite big epics. People have been telling me that I was writing books too long to get published, and so I wrote one twice as long, that sort of thing. And it was me saying, I'm going to do the book of my heart. I'm going to finally write this thing. And it turned out pretty well, but not good enough. I remember sending it to my editor after he bought Elantris. He wanted to buy something else. I sent him Way of Kings, and he was scared. Because it was big. He's like, I don't know if we can publish this right now from you at this length. And he was willing to do so, even though it was so long, but I wasn't satisfied with the book yet. And I actually told him, I don't think it's right. Something's still wrong with this book, and I need a few years to figure it out. And so it's been a long process getting Way of Kings, the first book, to work. I think my skills, honestly, I had to do the Wheel of Time and kind of be tossed into the deep end of the pool. It's like, here you go, learn to swim, because you're now writing the ending of the best series fantasy books ever. And so it forced me to grow, like suddenly having to lift a lot of weights. And it was during the process of doing Gathering Storm that things began to click, how I could make Stormlight work. And so I actually rewrote it from scratch in between Gathering Storm and Towers of Midnight, which was insane for me to do. But I did it because I had to write this book. By doing that, I actually kind of made it so that I would have to wait a few years before I could do the sequel, because doing the first book, which I had already written once, was viable between two Wheel of Time books. Doing the second book, Between Towers and A Memory of Light, would have delayed A Memory of Light by another year at least. And I just didn't feel that was right. It was already going to be 2 years in coming, and so I went ahead and did that. But it meant that the second Stormlight book would have to wait a few years. And so now I'm finally working on it, and I will be able to release it next year. It'll be Christmas time next year. And let me see. What am I going to read? I guess I will read to you. I don't even know how good this is. It's never... I wrote it on Monday, okay? This could be really, really rough. In fact, I know it's going to be really, really rough. So give me a little bit of leeway as you listen to this. But each book of the Stormlight Archive, I wanted to make sure it had a cohesive identity. And I think this is a trouble with big series that authors have gone before me have found being something difficult. I often say the advantage I have over Robert Jordan is that I got to read The Wheel of Time, and he didn't. No one had really done anything like he had done before at this length and scope. And you know, since then we've had George R. Martin doing a similar thing, but running into some of the same problems, that later books seem to lack an identity sometimes. And so one thing that I sat down and said I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and make each book have an identity focused on a certain character. All the characters will be in all books, but each one will get a series of flashbacks from a character. It will kind of, the soul of the book will be there. So the first book was a character named Kaladin. And the second book is this character named Shallan. And I'm going to read some of her first chapter in the book. And we will see how this goes. Shallan pinched the thin charcoal pen, drawing a series of long... Ooh, do I want to read this? The problem with this is it gives spoilers. How many haven't read Way of Kings? I am going to read a different scene from the same book that does not have major spoilers for you. This will be better. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I want to spoil the entire first book, one person's whole sequence. So instead, I'm going to read a chapter from Eshonai's viewpoint. And this will be very fun for those of you who read the first book, because it's from the viewpoint of Parshendi, which there are no viewpoints for in the first book. But it gives far fewer spoilers for the first book. It might be a little bit less of a good introduction for those of you who haven't read the first book, since you're going to be a little bit at sea, but it's not going to spoil the first one for you. So, the rhythm of resolve thrums softly in the back of Eshonai's mind as she reached the plateau at the center of the shattered plains. The central plateau, Narak, exile, home. She ripped the helm of her shard plate from her head, taking a deep breath of cool air. The plate ventilated wonderfully, but even it grew stuffy over time. Other soldiers landed behind her. She had taken some 1,500 on this run. It had been an easy one. They'd arrived soon before the humans and had harvested the gem heart with minimal fighting. Devi carried it. He had earned the privilege by being the one to spot the chrysalis from afar. She almost wished it had not been so simple a run. Almost. Where are you, Blackthorn? She thought, looking westward. Why have you not come to face me again? Nearby her soldiers passed, raising hands in farewell as they went their separate ways. Many softly sung or hummed a song to the morning rhythm. These days, few sung to excitement or even to resolve. Step by step, storm by storm, her people were sinking into a mire of depression. She turned back and strode toward the ruins that dominated Narak. After so many years, there still wasn't much left of them. Ruins of ruins, one might call them. The touch of men and Parshendi alike did not last long before the might of the high storms. That peaked rock formation ahead, that had probably been a spire. Over the decades, it had grown a patina of creme from the raging storms. The soft creme had seeped into cracks, lines between stones, filling windows, and then slowly hardened. The rock spire now looked like an enormous stalagmite, rounded point toward the sky. Sides knobbed with rock looked as if it had been melted. The spire must have had a strong core to survive the winds for so long. Other specks of ancient engineering had not fared so well. Eshonai passed lumps and mounds, remnants of fallen buildings that had slowly been consumed by the shattered plains. The storms were unpredictable. At times, huge sections of rock would break free from formations, leaving jagged lips and gouges. Other times, spires would stand for centuries, growing, not shrinking, as the winds weathered them. Eshonai herself discovered these ruins years ago, just before her expedition that had first encountered humans. Only 5 years ago, now, but also an eternity. She remembered what it felt like striking out, exploring a wide world she thought infinite, and now she'd spent her life trapped on this one plateau. The wilderness called to her, sung that she should gather up a few weapons and pack and strike out alone, see what the world had to offer, as she'd always promised herself that she would. That would not be her fate, not any longer. Increasingly, it seemed that her fate, and that of every Parshendi, would be to die upon the swords of the humans. She passed in the shadow of a lump of rock she had always imagined looked like a kind of city gate. From what little they'd learned from their spies over the years, the humans did not know, did not understand. They marched over the uneven surface of the plateaus and saw only natural rock, never knowing that they stepped on the tomb of a city long dead. Eshonai shivered and attuned to the rhythm of the lost. It was a soft beat, yet still violent, with sharp, separated notes. She did not attune it for long. Remembering the fallen was important, but working to protect the living was more so. She attuned back to resolve and entered Narak. Here they had built the best home they could during the years at war. Rocky shelves had become barracks, carapace from great shells forming the walls and roof. Mounds that had once been buildings now grew rock buds for food on the leeward side. All of the shattered plains had once been populated, but the largest congestion of buildings had been here at the center, and so the ruins of her people made their home in the ruins of a dead city. They had named it Narak, exile, for it was where they had come to be separated from their gods. Parshendi, both male and female, it's got an N on it, so, raised hands to her as she passed. She felt inexperienced to be their general. With casualties the force had taken during the years of fighting on the shattered plains, they were lucky to have any officers left, let alone shardbearers. The humans were relentless in their search for vengeance. She didn't blame them. She would probably have been the same in their position. She turned toward the Hall of Art. It was nearby. She hadn't put in an appearance there for days. Inside, soldiers did a horrible job of painting. Eshonai strode among them, still wearing her shard plate, helm under her arm. The long building had no roof, and the walls, particularly the stormward one, were thick with long hardened creme. They had discussed covering the ceiling with a carapace roof, but doing so was difficult, and the truth was that none of the art inside was worth protecting from high storms. In truth, most of it was better off being ruined. Still, they tried. Paper was beyond their capabilities to make out here on the plains, so they used shell as canvas. Using thick bristled brushes, the soldiers tried their best to paint copies of the arrangement of rockbud flowers on a pedestal at the center. Esh and I did a round of the artists looking at their products. They were awful. Splotches of garish color, off-center petals. Esh and I paused beside Veronis, one of her lieutenants. He held the brush delicately between armored fingers, a hulking form before a canvas. Plates of chitin armor grew from his arms, shoulders, chest, and even head. They were matched by her own. "You're getting better," Esh and I said to him, speaking to the rhythm of praise. He looked at her and hummed softly to skepticism. Esh and I chuckled, raising a hand to his shoulder. She leaned in. "It actually looks like flowers. I mean it. It looks like muddy water on a brown plateau," he said, "maybe with some brown leaves floating in it. Why do colors turn brown when they mix? 3 beautiful colors put together and they become the least beautiful color. It makes no sense, General." General, at times she felt as awkward in the position as these men did trying to paint pictures. She wore war form, and she needed the armor for battle, but she preferred work form, more limber, more rugged. It wasn't that she disliked leading these men, but doing the same thing every day, drills, plateau runs, numbed her mind. She wanted to be seeing new things, going new places. Instead, she joined her people in a long funeral vigil as one by one they died. "No," she thought, "we will find a way out of it." The art was piece of that, she hoped. By her orders, each man or woman took a turn in the Hall of Art, on schedule at their appointed time. And they tried hard. So far, it had been about as successful as trying to leap a chasm when the other side was out of sight. "No spread?" she asked. "Not a one." He spoke it to the rhythm of morning. She heard that rhythm far too often these days. "Keep trying," she said. "We will not lose this battle for lack of effort." "But General," he said, "what is the point? Having artists won't save us from the swords of humans." Nearby, other soldiers turned toward her. "Artists won't help," she said to the rhythm of peace. "But my sister is confident that she is close to discovering new forms. We need to know the process of change. If we can discover how to create artists, it might help us. It might help my sister with her research." Veronis nodded. He was a good soldier. Not all of them were. War form did not magically make one more obedient. Unfortunately, it did hamper one's artistic skill. Esh and I had tried painting. She couldn't think the right way, couldn't grasp the abstractions needed to create art. War form was a good form, versatile. It didn't impede thought, like mating form did. You were yourself when you were war form, same with work form. But each had their quirks. A worker had a difficult time committing violence. There was a block in the mind somewhere. It was one of the reasons she liked that form. It forced her to think differently in order to get around problems. Neither form could create art. Not well, at least. Mating form was better, but it came with a whole host of other problems. Keeping those types focused on anything productive was almost impossible. There were 2 other forms, though the first, dull form, was rarely used. It was not a keen-minded form. Instead, it was a relic of the past, before they discovered something better. They left only thin form, a general form that was alive and careful. They used it for nurturing young and doing the kind of work that required more nimbleness than brawn. Few could be spared for that form, though it was by the best of the 4 at art, by their experiences. The old song spoke of hundreds of forms. Now they knew only 5. Well, 6 if one counted the slave form, the form with no spren, no soul, and no song. The form the humans were accustomed to, the one they called parchment. It wasn't a form, however, but a lack of a form. I'm going to stop there because there's only a few minutes left.